Why, hello there. My name is Mountain, and today I'd like to talk to you about this. And what is this, you might ask? Well, this, my friends, is the Aer Street Sling 2.4 liters. As the name suggests, this is something of a fashion-forward, urban EDC use intended sling by Aer, the San Francisco-based manufacturer of a dizzying array of bags, slings, pouches, luggage, and other kinds of like everyday carry and travel accessories. Now, its strengths include that it has a fairly structured, boxy shape, a distinctive hip wear style, a wide opening top mouth, and a back slip pocket that makes for easy on-the-go access to some of the contents of this bag in certain situations. It also can carry moderately bulky items like a pocket camera, maybe a Sony RX100 or a Canon Powershot V1, or also lots of flat things like a passport, slim wallet, a notebook, maybe a kind of battery bank, etc. It also has a little bit of versatility. The strap is easily removable, and also there are some kind of side-mounted lashing points here that you can use to either extend the capacity of the bag by clipping things to the outside if that's your jam, or also you can maybe streamline the bag a little bit by removing the straps and use it kind of like a drop-in pouch in a larger bag. Now, there are also some areas for improvement on this bag. The front lid and the Fidlock buckle that comes with it are a very distinctive style element in this bag, but it's also simultaneously quite bulky, but also weirdly tight in here. And it's a little bit fussy to access under certain situations, despite the use of a magnetic, how do they work, buckle on the front. And it's basically, in my experience, just good for carrying keys. Despite the boxy shape, also, it tends to hold a lot less than you might expect. And the pockets, the compartments in this bag, the main one, the front and the back, tend to fight with each other, plus the interiors tend to fight with each other for space in certain loadout situations. The strap itself, while it's removable, is quite thin. And that means that if you really load this bag down, which isn't necessarily that easy to do because it does have a limited carrying capacity, as I mentioned, it can be a little bit uncomfortable on your neck and shoulders, or if you're kind of, if it's swinging around and kind of cut into your shoulders a little bit here. So next, let's move on to an overview of this bag. It's available in one size, 2.4 liters, in one color, black, or if you're in the ultra fabric way like I am here, what's called Black Magic, and 3 different material ways. There's a base nylon that retails for $69 US, an X-Pack variant that retails for $89 US, and then this kind of ultra fabric variant, which retails for $99 US. It's available on airsf.com or whatever your local country retailer's URL is. And the one that I have in front of you here is the the ultra version 2.4 liter in the Black Magic colorway. Now, a quick disclaimer before we go on with this review. I'd like to thank Aer for sending this bag over for review, and I've been using it for about 2 months now as my sort of everyday use sling, a little bit of travel use sling. Even though they sent this over, though, as usual, all opinions are my own. They don't get any input in this video. They don't get to see it before it goes live. They don't even know when it's going to go live, etc., etc. So let's talk about the materials and design. Obviously, since I've got the ultra fabric version here, some of the specs might vary slightly from like the nylon or X-Pack. You can go up on their website and take a look at those if you want the specific differences. This one's got the ultra fabric. The base base nylon one is 1680D Cordura. The inside material on all of them is this kind of lightweight ripstop nylon interior. You've got YKK, AquaGuard, or water resistant zippers, little Hypalon accents in some of the zipper pulls or what have you, some basic nylon webbing for the handle and the strapping, and then also here, and some Fidlock, big magnetic Fidlock buckle on the front, and some Duraflex gate clips on the side here for the hardware. In terms of the design of the bag, it is, as you can see, first of all, it does stand up on its own under most loadouts because of sort of the boxy nature, and it kind of has like that flat bottom on there. If you put stuff in the front and not in the main compartment, though, it will topple over. It has a very distinctive kind of square, slightly chunky, boxy kind of nature with some rounded profiles. The most prominent element on the bag, obviously, is this big front lid, which I'll talk about next here, and the Fidlock buckle. It really does sort of, highlight and dominate the visual appearance of the sling, and then also like that plus the boxy nature means that that's really what you see when you've got this thing on your hip. Is like it's almost like a satchel, or it reminds me of like those old timey kind of satchels, like if you see like, I don't know, World War II soldiers had all these little satchels on their side here. That's something that this reminds me of, maybe a more utilitarian kind of like access there. Conversely, the sides and then the back, while they do have, like, for example, a slip pocket or like this simple strapping here, for me were a lot less prominent visually than just the overall kind of like squareness and then the frontness of the largeness of this. It actually reminds me a little bit of like back in the day, Aer used to have these really big buckles as design elements on their sling, like the original City Sling or whatever. And this one is almost too large, in my opinion. I'll talk more about that in a second. So it really does dominate. And I think that's maybe where the street sling part of it is like, this is a little bit fashion forward. It's a fashion choice as far as I can tell. The last thing to mention in this section is not only does it stand up on its own, but generally it's fairly water resistant, except for the front compartment, which I will talk about, but the material on the Ultra at least is water resistant. No tape seams, but you got your storm guard zipper on here and all that's a generally decently water resistant, and you know the shape kind of helps things kind of just brush off rather than kind of pool on there. Okay, so next let's talk about this front compartment. As I've mentioned it a few times, it is the dominant visual feature on this bag. It's very big, quite solid. It's this big giant flap. It's got this foam on the front of it, and it's got some shaping that kind of gives it this, you can see like this 3D profile. It almost like cups in over the top here. Now, as I mentioned just a moment ago, it doesn't fully cover it. So you get these kind of holes on either side where water can ingress into the front compartment, which I thought was a little bit surprising, because like clearly they put some thought into like making this kind of cup over there, but still kind of left those gaps in there. It opens quite wide to allow you access into the bottom or to the main compartment here, but it's also simultaneously quite tight. Like this is all that it really expands here. And that's surprising, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, but it is something that like you've got this theoretically big open access and then like a really tight pocket, which is sort of a little bit of an unrefined interaction in my experience. Now, I feel like lids themselves can be a bit polarizing. They're not usually my preference, but I know some people like them, and I said like, they have some advantages, like theoretically full easy access like to the contents here, high protection resistance because you know the foam and the shaping and all that. But you know, weirdly here in this execution, I feel some of those traditional strengths of a lid are muted. You do get the full access, but then it's really tight on the inside because of the very, you know, tall but kind of tight pocket here. And you do have some protection due to the thickness of this thing, but not so much in terms of like protection for the corners for water ingress, or like maybe small things can fall out there. So that's also a little bit curious there. Now, the main kind of like, you know, feature on top besides the lid here is the big buckle. It's part of the dominant visual and the design of this bag, as I mentioned. It's quite massive for the size of this sling. It's a Fidlock V buckle. So quite, you know, a large and utilitarian type buckle, but it's attached also on this like little strap here, dual strap, and you can adjust theoretically the length of like where the buckle falls on here. So you could, you know, clip it in there and then I kind of theoretically cinch it down and get a really tight pull if you wanted to try and like cover that hole. That doesn't quite work because it just actually makes it buckle and then makes the fabric face buckle, and then more water gets in there. Or you can theoretically, you know, if you wanted to overextend and carry a little bit, something really tall and flat inside here, you could kind of let out the buckle a little bit and do that here. There's some cons to it though. Like theoretically, Fidlock buckles are very easy to open and close, but I found this one kind of fussy in certain situations, especially when you got it worn and then you go to try and pick it up. Sometimes it would like get twisted around like this. You can see like I've got it on my hip, I reach down and then I come up, but as I'm, you know, grab the cord and try and come up, the buckle comes up in the inverse location or situation. So then I have to twist it around and then get it situated and then it'll buckle in. But what happened a lot of the time is I come in, I get it twisted and I twist it around the wrong direction. And now I've got a twist in my, you know, cable or in my strap, which isn't like the end of the world, but it does make it really hard. Then when you wanted to cinch it down, you have to kind of fish this thing out and then it doesn't cinch down all the way. And it also looks ugly. That's not something I would abide very nicely. So I did find it's a little bit fussy here, mainly because it's on this big loose strap. If you were like routinely overloading this pocket with things in vertical height, or this pocket could like really expand out, and so you needed to be able to like expand dramatically here because it was that functional, I would understand. But I don't think that that's something that you really will end up doing a lot because it's just such a narrow, flat pocket, which I'll talk about here in a moment. So for me, I felt like this was a little bit of a fussy implementation. And also the V buckle itself is quite long and rigid, as you can see. Like it's a sizable, you know, like big brick. It actually takes up 1/3 maybe slightly more than 1/3 of the front face of the bag with this big rigid thing that doesn't bend, which actually is unusual, I think, to have such a long, non-flexible, rigid object that dominates so much of what is normally expected to be a kind of pliable, soft, compliant plane. It doesn't. Again, this main front pocket here has some other issues, which I'm getting to right next, but I did find that was just a little bit of an unusual interaction. Now, I think this is also a little bit subjective. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I did feel like it was maybe a little bit of a callback to Aer's earlier slings from a few generations ago. Like I mentioned earlier, the Aer City Sling V1 used to sport these massively oversized chonky buckles as prominent style item. Beauty and style is in the eye of the beholder. I do feel like there were, as I mentioned, some utility trade-offs for the sake of this style. Now, that having been said, maybe a little bit less subjectively, is what happens inside of this main compartment here. Now, under the front lid, you have the front pocket of this sling. It has a little bit of independent dimension because, as you can see, there is some kind of corner shaping here in each corner that kind of theoretically gives it a little bit of dimension. You can see if you look at it from the side profile, you do get a little bit here. But in practice, I found what I could carry inside of here without a lot of hassle would be quite limited. Now, the main feature in here is this built-in keychain, bright lime green in the ultra colorway. You use it to fish out your keys here. I've just got my keys on a carabiner, taped up so you can't lock-picking lawyer me, and then you can see it's just a nice standard, keychain implementation, nothing too fancy. Certainly better than some of the ones we see in some competitor products, but nothing too fancy. So it's really easy to fish your keys in and out using the loop. And I found also, because this is worn on the hip, and the strap is quite long, it's very easy to be able to like open your door without needing to unclip the keys from here. So that was a very positive point here, like easy to just fish them out, unlock your door, and then stick them back in there, and then fuss a little bit with the buckle, but you can, close it like that. And that's a fairly good interaction when it works well. Access to anything other than the keys, though, is quite frictionful, right? I already talked about several times, it's a little bit narrow, it's a little bit tight. It doesn't stretch at all in the Ultra. Maybe in the Cordura version, it stretches a little bit more. So anything small you put in here will just fall all the way to the bottom. It's very hard to see into the bottom of that, again, despite the very tall opening lid pocket here. And even small items like AirPods, which is something I would have expected to be able to carry inside of here. So I've got just some AirPods in a Bellroy case for protection so they don't get scratched up. You can stick them in there. It's not, it fits because there is some independent dimension in there, but I found getting them out of there required me to kind of get my hands in there and almost kind of like split my fingers and pull them out like this, which isn't like super comfy. The other problem that you run into, though, is if you do that and you put your keys in there, well, you run out of space really quickly. Like that's just janky. Does it work? Yeah, it fits sort of. And that's where, it's a little bit of the overload functionality, I guess, is a little bit beneficial. But like this is terrible. Get your thing out. You got to take this out and you got to go split your fingers, get your fingers around the AirPods, bring them out like this, and go put your keys back in. That's a little bit terrible. Also terrible is if you take something small like, some chapstick and like maybe some hand sanitizer and put it in there, and then we go to get everything out. So you unbuckle this, try and pull your keys out, and this time I was lucky, but often what will happen is some of the small things might come out with it. It all depends, like if your keys kind of work their way, and usually because the keys are heavier, they'll tend to work their way to the bottom, through the normal swaying on your hip, and then the things will be on the top like this, and then when you pull them out, some things will drop out. It does, vary, but it happens enough that for me it was a little bit annoying, and I ended up just really keeping my keys inside of here. This seems like a very large and overbuilt, and a lot of like weight and fabric and fanciness devoted to something that in the end was really only functional for carrying my keys. One last thing I'll mention is if you want to get more use out of this, you can just ignore the key leash altogether. And as I'll talk about later, you can clip your keys to these straps on the outside there. If that's the kind of human being that you are, I would not personally do that myself for a variety of reasons. And then you could, theoretically use this for something like, AirPods or what have you. So next, let's flip the bag around, talk about the rear slip pocket, which is pretty straightforward because it is a simple deep back slip pocket here. I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max. There's no top closure or elastic or anything. It's just a simple broad. There's no interior lining. It's just, I mean, there's a color contrast lining, but no like fleece or anything like that. I just keep my phone in here for easiest access. It works well with items like that, relatively flat, heavy enough to fall to the bottom and stay in. I would not personally put like a passport or a wallet inside of here because, you know, it will very easily slip out there unless it's just temporarily. Like if I'm going through customs, I just can slip my passport in the back here and get it in and out or something like that. If you have something like a Bellroy note taker, you know, some field notes or something like that, I think that works really well inside of here as well, because like you don't, hopefully it's not the end of the world if your field notes or notebook, you know, slips out. Also, I think if you've got if you're carrying two phones, sometimes there's a situation you got to carry two phones. You could put one phone inside of here and then one phone inside of the main compartment, blah, 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 blah. But usually for me, I just put my phone in there. There is a little bit of padding between the outside and then the inside wall of this, so that gives you a little bit of protection from the interior contents if you put your phone glass facing inward, but there's no padding on this side here. Fairly fast access though, especially when worn at the hip. You can just get your phone in and out and drop it in and out like that. So next, let's talk about maybe access into this and then the main compartment and all that. So access to here is via a two-way YKK water resistant zipper, opens down almost all the way down to around right here. Very easy to zip, close, and open when it's worn, in my experience, as long as you have something inside of here. If there's no weight, then sometimes you'll need, like, you know, two hands to, I mean, if it's hanging is usually enough, but if you have absolutely nothing inside of there, sometimes you need two hands to open it. But generally for me, I found it was quite easy here. And as I mentioned before, like, it opens up really nicely to give you like this really, you know, high visibility view into the contents of what you have inside of there, which I think is great. So zooming in a little bit and looking at the inside of this, here you have the front of the bag and then the back of the bag. So if you open it up, you see right away, you've got one flat slip pocket on the inside front, and then you've got two kind of elasticy, stretchy pockets there. And then on the back, you have a big elasticy, stretchy pocket on the back there. Let's start by talking about this back elastic pocket first, which I'm going to now show you. So now this is the front of the bag, and then this is the back of the bag, and here you're looking at this. So this big, broad, flat elastic pocket is the largest and takes up most of the back panel. It's a pretty firm mesh, actually. It's this high quality gray mesh, I guess, elastic fabric. It's a single layer with a reinforcing kind of elastic strip at the top. It's actually moderately easy in and out access, I found, especially when worn, as long as the main compartment itself isn't like overloaded. And this pocket is quite flexible with the range of things that it can carry. It has a substantial amount of stretch, and it is fairly broad and a little bit of like just, I don't know if I'd say independent dimension, but maybe just a natural elasticity in the broad. This means it can accommodate a wide variety of things. So it's better for flatter objects. I have my notebook inside of here. I previously mentioned if you were carrying two phones here, you could slip another phone in here. So here we have an Asus ROG 9 Pro, and then in the back I have my iPhone 15 Pro Max inside of there. So you could, like, you know, double phone things inside of there, and I'll show you some other sample loadouts here in a second, but you can also put some moderately bulky things in there. So here we have the AirPods Pro in there, and then those easily fit inside of there, and you can see it's accommodated by the mesh and the stretch there. Now, just be mindful that anything you put in here will, especially if you put other stuff in the main compartment, will eventually start to like kind of push against the back pocket there. And while there is some padding, there isn't padding on the inside here. So if you have some delicate things like another phone and then like a hard thing like AirPods or whatever, they can start to kind of like push against each other, maybe in a way that you want to be careful about. So now let's flip the bag around, and we're looking here front and then the inside front here. And there's this simple nylon flat slip pocket here. There's no stretch or elastic on this one. And it also has a padding between the front compartment that I talked about here, external compartment, and the inside compartment. There's a little bit of like foam inside of here, but there's no protection on this side here. So inside of here, I found this pocket a little bit harder to use. It's best for something like really flat, like you know, a passport or a notebook or something like that. Sometimes I'll carry like my wallet, and like here I have my little, this is the Evergoods wallet, and then here's like the Rofmia coin pouch that I often carry, and that will be something I drop inside of there. I found that, especially because I talked about this front pocket's quite tight, like it could kind of like intrude. You can see kind of intrudes in a lumpy fashion inside of here, which I didn't think was particularly great interaction. A thicker wallet's not going to be able to fit inside of there very well. There's just no stretch on there. Was best, but it did sometimes felt a little janky to try and get it in and out there. Now, sewn on top of that, we have these two, in this case, it's lime green, elastic pockets here. Now, it's a simple elastic that's sewn over. So this one's doubled over. This fabric is doubled over. Unlike the back one that I talked about, which was a single layer with just an elastic at the top, this one is just doubled over. So what that means is actually it's a fairly like firm stretch, and the pockets themselves are also like curiously kind of split asymmetrically. So this one's about 2/3 of the width, and then this one's 1/3 of the width. And that's a little bit odd, I found, because it just made it a little bit hard to find things to put in here to use up the space effectively. It limited that, like the doubled layered construction plus the kind of asymmetrical split made it a little bit difficult to find things that accommodate exactly. And then like it would have just been more flexible, I think, one, if it had been a single layer, so it was a little bit more pliant, and then had been one single flat pocket instead of like bifurcated like this. In this one, I found it hard to find what to put in this. I usually just put like my AirPods inside of there, but it's a pretty tight pocket. Like I couldn't really find a lot of other good things to put in there. If I put something small like my chapstick and my hand sanitizer or whatever, it worked okay in this pocket, but it was a little bit hard to get it in and out sometimes, I found. So I tend to just dump those in the main pocket, or vice versa. Like, put the AirPods in the main pocket and then put those in there. On the other side, there's this weird like 1/3 width pocket that honestly I couldn't find anything good to put inside of there. Here I've just got a Carriology times Giant Mouse collab knife inside of there. I don't usually, it's not legal to carry knives around where I am, so I just kind of put this for demo purposes. I think something else, I'll show you some other sample things in there in a moment. But honestly, like maybe a pen, maybe a flashlight or whatever, I usually left this one unopened. And this one I found was very hard. If you put something like, your chapstick or something inside of there, it just was really hard to get it out. Like this actually it's annoying. I never do that actually like that. Finally, there is the main compartment, which just opens wide open like this. Inside of here, I have just my comb, my chapstick, and some hand sanitizer, and some cough drops here. And here, I think you're starting to see like what I was talking about when I say like this sling is, holds a little bit less than you might expect for 2.4 liters, and the pockets fight with each other for space. You can see how everything's kind of like, it's all like pockets on pockets on pockets, and then when you put stuff in there, all that main compartment space goes away. Like it looks like it's like this nice square chunky thing, but in reality, once you start putting just a few things inside of there, you really have not much inside of that main compartment left anymore. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about like, different things that this thing can hold. So let's get some of this thing emptied out here and show you some of the different samples. So I've got the main compartment all emptied out here. So first thing I mentioned is like, I'm like, this is actually a pretty decent sling if you want to carry, for example, different kinds of like quote unquote pocket cameras. So we have a Sony RX100 Mark VII. We have a Canon Powershot V1. We have a Leica Dlux 8 with a small rig grip on there. And then we have the Sony RX1R Mark III. If you were to take something, let's start with the smallest one here maybe. You could obviously take this guy in here and he drops right in and fits right inside of there. You can take your wallet, put that in the back pocket there with the coin pouch, and then maybe drop in like your hand sanitizer and your lip chapstick or whatever in the front there, and then that works okay. You can crack it open. It's really easy to kind of still fish this one out for the most part. You can also stand it vertically if you wanted. I don't think you're able to carry the notebook, and maybe or maybe not with the AirPods. It sort of depends. You might have to stick those in the front there, but I thought that was a nice carry. You can also take a larger camera. So I think like the Powershot V1 is a little bit of a larger camera. That will also fit inside of here. Just put it like that. It starts to get a little bit chunkier, but you can see it does fit. And it is kind of a nice way of carrying that in a way that's really easy to kind of just reach down, pull it out, and go on the street there, which I like. So if you're into street photography, I don't know, I would recommend the V1 for street photography. It's not a street photography camera, but I guess maybe street photography. That might be stretching it. This is the Leica Dlux 8. It's not honestly that great of a camera, if I'm being honest. And I think about selling it quite often. But and that will also fit nicely inside of here. Again, you are starting to get a little bit chunkier, so you might need to rearrange what you're carrying inside of there to get this in and out. But you know, you can still get that on your hip like this. It is starting to really, it's a deeper camera, especially with this grip on there. It's a deeper camera than the V1. You can see with the lens sticking out a bit more. So it's starting to push, I think, the boundaries of what you're gonna be able to carry inside of this camera or this sling. And then finally, we have here the Sony RX1R Mark III, just recently released. I'm actually thinking about doing a full review of this on the channel. I don't usually do camera reviews, but I have thoughts on this one, and I've used the RX1R Mark I and Mark II way back in the day. So let me know if you'd be interested in maybe hearing my thoughts on this. So this one will technically fit. I have like my wallet inside of here in the back pocket. You can technically kind of drop it in like this and then, you know, zip it up like that. It's really straining the capacity of this, but it is wearable like on your hip like this. And actually when you open it up, you know, it pops open, it's ready to, you know, grab and go like this. I don't know that I would routinely carry this camera inside of there because really all else you could fit in there is just like your wallet or something like that. But it is something that I thought I'd mention is feasible and possible with this. So other things you can carry inside of here that I think take advantage of the chunky carry nature of this. This is a battery bank. This is the Nightcore Pocket 10,000. That fits really nicely inside of there. You can see, or in that main compartment. This is the Playdate, which I kind of like. I love little goofy things like that. Here's an Olight flashlight baton to Warrior Mini 3, excuse me. That is actually one thing that, you know, rather than a knife, you could carry inside of that front pocket like that here. Not going back to cameras for a second, but if you make foolish financial decisions like I do, and you bought this Leica Luxe grip for your for your phone, because if you want to know the kind of poor financial decisions Mountain makes, go look up how much this thing costs. I bought this. You could fit that inside of here really nicely too, and you can celebrate your foolishness every time you open your sling there. I also alluded to this briefly earlier, and I will talk about it. Like if you want to carry like your passport and like maybe your international driver's license there, and maybe like, you know, like a notebook or whatever, and then like your travel documents, like a travel wallet or whatever, I think this makes for an excellent kind of plain sling, and it's really works really well with a lot of like different vertically oriented flatter items: passport, international driver's license, wallet, travel wallet, or something like that. Like, and it just opens up so wide right on your hip, you can see right inside of it. I think this is a great usage for this bag here. So next, let's talk about the load carriage on this sling here. So load carriage consists of this top handle. It's a substantial top handle, I think, for a bag of this size. Has a foam core covered with kind of simple webbing strapping. It sticks up, but it integrates, I think, nicely with the overall visuals due to the kind of rounded square shape of the design in general. It's relatively easy to grasp due to the prominent position and kind of arc in there, but it is actually a quite narrow opening because of just like the size of this bag overall. So there isn't as much space between the handle and the top surface as you might expect. So if you got gloves, it's a little bit difficult to grab, but like with bare hands, it's fine. I mean, that having been said, it's really just like, you could just pick up the bag, like it's not that big. There's side webbing on this bag, as I mentioned. If you kind of look from here, you can see there's this loop here, and then there's a loop here, and then the same thing on the other side here, 2 loops. One of those is where you attach the main strap, which I'll talk about in a second. The other one, you can attach other things. It reminds me of like how Evergoods kind of have like these kind of loops where you can attach carabiners or whatever on their bags as well. I showed you earlier, you could clip your keys onto here on one of these loops or something like that, or something else. I mean, honestly, like it is a thin strap and it's already worn low on the hip. So like, I think you want to be very conservative about what else you have hanging from here. But it is nice to have as an option. Now, the main load carriage comes from this strap here, and it is a simple thin nylon strap. It's about 2 centimeters wide and very thin. There's no additional shoulder pad or anything built into it. It's quite long. The maximum extension is 155 centimeters plus the length of the clips on each side. So that should fit a wide variety of body styles. And as noted, you would usually carry the sling down by your hip or side across body here, though you could, I guess, tighten it up a little bit if you wanted it up here. It is designed, I think, naturally for lower carry or side body carry. It's adjustable. The strap is adjustable with a single sliding buckle Duraflex hardware, as I mentioned. Holds its place very well. Has an integrated kind of strapping keeper that I think is mainly intended, you can see actually, to prevent exactly what I have going on here, which is because the strap is so thin, it tends to twist when you have it elongated. So actually, you're supposed to slide this carrier down here and tighten it up by the gate clips so that you don't get that kind of weird twisting motion. But I found it kind of like works its way up, and then occasionally I'll get the strap twisted through the gatekeeper clips. As I did mention, it attaches to the, well, you could attach it either to these lower attachment points or the top attachment points. I found in practice, like attaching them here causes a lot of issues. It's much better, I think, just attach them up here. Simple gatekeeper clips. They're a little bit annoying, as gatekeeper clips naturally are, you know, to attach and detach, but hopefully you're not doing that too often here. And these ones hurt your fingers a little bit less than some of the larger, stronger ones here. Because the strap is completely detachable, you can take them off and use this thing sort of like a drop-in pouch. It's a little bit lightly padded, as I mentioned during this review, in like your main, you know, like luggage or something like that, if you want to use it, you know, at the destination. Or alternatively, like if you use it as your plane sling, you know, bring it on the plane with you, whatever, all your travel documents in the seat with you. Then when you get to the destination, you just take the strap off, toss it in your, you know, daily bag, and use it as like a pouch inside of your EDC bag at the destination or something like that. I thought that was a nice little touch. I didn't do that too often. I've seen some people online suggest you could use it as a tech pouch. I don't really think that that's a good use of this for a variety of reasons. I think it's just overbuilt and has too poor of a carry capacity to size ratio for that kind of use, but it is a thing you could do if you wanted to do that. So finally, like, let's talk about who this bag is for and not for. So I think it's for travelers or one bag travelers. As I mentioned earlier, it makes an excellent plane sling. Side hip wear makes it easy to access the contents when you're on the go. Works really well for keeping like your passport and your wallet and your, like, you know, travel wallet and international driver's license, blah, 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 all that stuff kind of separated and really in and out, access really quick. Phone in the back slip pocket, super good for that. And then, as I mentioned, you could toss it as a pouch by removing the strap into your EDC bag at the destination. Great stuff. I think it's also a good sling for folks looking to carry like a pocket cam or like small flat items. I showed you it works with a variety of smaller pocket cameras, which is not something that you can always get, you know, comfortably in some kinds of slings. And I think that the side hip carry position makes it naturally easier to get in and out. Also, like, you know, smaller, bulkier items, like I mentioned, like the play date or like the, you know, battery bank, or if you got two phones or something like that, like that's all right inside of this as well. And again, the access is pretty good. I think finally, like the fashion forward EDC homies, like this is clearly a sling that puts fashion in the forefront. It's in the eye of the beholder. If this is your jam, you're going to like it. If it's not your jam, that's okay. I also understand that. Now, who it's not for. It's not for folks that have a lot of small things. Like I showed you, like it gets kind of fussy inside of there really quickly, much faster than you would expect. A lot of the pockets like kind of fight with each other for space and access, and you know, the front part is a little bit fussy and all that. There are just far better slings for folks like that. Folks that I think more than just a small loadout too, like it's just a really limited carrying capacity, all the things I just said. They're just, you know, if you're, Aer makes a lot of, in my opinion, superior slings with superior EDC small item organization with like 10, 12 pockets for like your AirPods and your chapstick and your, like, you know, your wallet and your, you know, battery and all that. And you still have a big usable main space, even, you know, at the same 2.5 liter size. Like there's a couple of other options in their lineup that I think are superior for folks like that. And then I think finally, like for folks that, you know, maybe want a higher, and this is the same theme, so I'm repeating myself a little bit, like, you know, you want a high carry capacity to size ratio. This one is sacrificing a lot of utility and carrying capacity and also maybe fussiness, or inducing a lot of fussiness for the sake of, I think, some of the visuals on here. So if you're in the market for a sling like this, what are some other slings that you might want to consider? Well, first and foremost, and I kind of debated whether I should include this inside of here because this is no longer available, but it just seems so obvious that I have to include it. This, my friends, is the Aer Travel Pack 3 Micro Ultra, which dropped a while ago. I don't remember if it was earlier this year or late last year. It retailed for $100 US. A lot of people thought this was like an April Fool's joke when it first dropped, which I understand. It's basically the Aer Travel Pack 3, but like in a teeny tiny size. And you can see here, you got the straps and everything and the buckles, all that. Super cute. But you can, I remember thinking, like, I mean, this, I think a lot of people saw this for what I think it was, which is really like kind of like a neat little souvenir novelty item for air lovers or whatever. But it is functional as a sling. You could see immediately the same kind of like hip style carry, the same general like familial resemblance or whatever. I found a lot of the use cases. I actually unironically used this. My masculinity is generally not so delicate or fragile, but there were a couple of times where I was like, maybe you shouldn't be wearing a tiny, adorable micro backpack on your hips when you walk through the streets. But I did unironically use this a few times, and I found that the use cases were exactly the same as this for like carrying slightly chonky things, for carrying travel things, which I actually did use this as a plain sling once. So anyway, I don't know if you can still find these things. They're ridiculously exorbitantly priced on the third-party market if you can still find them, but I just had to mention it because like I think it was like maybe the precursor study that informed this eventually. The Black Ember Compact. Now this is a 5-liter sling. But it is also like a hip style oriented sling, excuse me. It opens slightly differently. It opens all the way like this. You can see far more organization, though I also found simultaneously this also kind of like also had a lot of pockets intruding with each other, like pockets on pockets on pockets that kind of fought with each other. And I think like a lot of, Black Ember stuff, like the technical promise and the execution or the materials and then the promise, the functionality on paper looks awesome. In reality, that things tend to be sometimes fall a little bit short. That's generally how I would describe my interactions with Black Ember, and I own literally all of their products at this point. They do have a similar kind of like front lid situation going on, though. They use magnets. How do they work? With also like a slip pocket here and then a little pass through for your battery. And then there is also a rear pocket for the phone, which is a little bit more usable. It zips open or whatever. Overall, this one has a lot more capacity and carry. And this, sorry, I forgot to mention, like the straps are removable, top handle is also removable, blah, blah, blah. It's more oriented towards, I think, travel sling use or whatever, but you can use it for most of the things that this one does. Mystery Ranch District 2. This is also another like little hip wear style pouchy that goes on your hip here, available in a wide variety of colors. It's a much simpler but still kind of like same general approach, like a couple of big bifurcated pockets in there with little pockets on pockets and pockets and pockets sewn on each of those flaps. Really easy in and out, like on the hip. It just opens wide open. Same thing, front flap. They use Velcro here. I know how that works. And then a little key leash in the front, but this one's clearly just intended to carry your keys. And then similarly, a back slip pocket here. Unclippable, but not fully removable shoulder belt on here. This is a much simpler kind of execution, but it's also a cheaper price point, and I think available in a wide variety of colors and materials. So I think like people who want like a simpler take on the same genre, maybe without all the fussiness, maybe at a more affordable price point, I think this is a good option there. So really, my friends, that is it. If you have any questions about this sling, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. If I can, I will answer them. If you have anything you would like me to review, whether that's bags, slings, or maybe something else like those cameras or whatever, go ahead and let me know. And if I can and I have time, I will review them. Thank you very much.